Hey everyone! We're going to be doing our very first Photoshop-based tutorial today. So if you haven't already, go down to the link in the description. There's a Dropbox folder full of a lot of different photos that we're going to be collaging together to make an album cover design for one of my favorite albums called The Impossible Dream. So go grab those files and then we'll get started. So this is the album cover that we're going to be making today, and it is a collage based on one of my favorite albums, The Impossible Dream by Patty Griffin. So we're drawing inspiration from 1920s design and specifically the ephemera that surrounds that era. So we've got some nice woodcuts, as you can see here. Or a heron, depending on where you are, is a woodcut. So is this nice little banner that we have going on here. And also we have some butterflies and an old Paris postcard. So in my version of this particular album cover, she's dreaming about moving to Paris. So as you can see, this has a lot of layers to it, but we're going to build those up. And while we're doing this, learn about how to use masks here in Photoshop. And I have some pretty unique methods of using masks, so hopefully, even if you're really familiar with the selection tools in Photoshop, you'll learn a little bit more about masks. First things first, we need some source files. So I've given you quite a few source files for this, which means that you guys can produce whatever version of this file you would like in the background. So this is the album tutorial collage folder that I've given you. Go down to the description and download it. It's in a Dropbox folder, okay? So we have some bird elements, some celestial looking ones, a nice moth, and for our foreground, we have this vintage smoking lady who's supposed to be dreaming about her boyfriend, I think. But we're gonna be making her dream about Paris instead. So go ahead and grab those assets and we'll get started in Photoshop. Let's take a look at the original album cover design. This is the original album cover, and arguably it is already lovely. I love the colors and the layout. I couldn't figure out who designed this, but I do know that Patty Griffin is an artist, so she may very well have designed it herself. Don't quote me on that. I couldn't find a credit anywhere on my copy of the album. Let's start by setting up our album cover correctly with the right resolution settings. So you can get to this menu by going to File, New, okay? So first of all, let's give it a name. Let's call it Album Collage. I'm going to name mine Album Collage 2 because I've already done this once. Change your units to inches, okay? So that's a little drop down menu. You can change your units to inches, and we need this to be 12 by 12, and we need this to be 300 dpi. 300 is just the default print resolution, so don't overthink that. It just has to do with how much resolution is in your image file, and 300 usually looks best for print. If you want to change the background contents color, this would be where you can choose that. I usually set mine to a gray instead of a white because I don't like staring at a white screen. And I'm going to go ahead and press OK. Okay, now that we've got our document all set up, let's start doing the collage. The first thing I want you to look for in that file that you downloaded after you unzip it is the one that is called PM Book Pages. PM is just a paper texture. Let's drop that into the background of our file. And if you want, keep your window of your files that you downloaded open so you can drag them into Photoshop easily as we're working. Grab the one that says PM Book Pages, drag and drop it into the interface here, and as you can see, it doesn't fill my screen yet, so I'm going to resize it to where it does. And you can do that using the handles along the outside here. So let's zoom out a little tiny bit. I'm hitting Command minus to do that. And just put our paper texture here in the background. It's always nice to have a good base. And let's go ahead and rename that paper. Okay, so easy stuff so far. I like to start with the hardest things first and then have fun with playing with the background after the fact. So the hardest thing that we're going to do is to cut out this smoking woman from her background because it's a really subtle image. I want you to look for the Smoky Lady Vintage image file and drag and drop that into your document. So here she is. Let's go ahead and resize her to where she's much bigger in the window so we can see what's going on. And I'm going to Control click on this and flip it horizontally, okay? Because I actually want her to be looking up at the Eiffel Tower, like in the original here. Okay, so I've got my image placed in here. Let's add a mask. The mask button is down here at the bottom of your layers panel. And as you can see, I just added a white mask. Now, something to pay really close attention to is whether or not you're coloring on the pixel information or whether or not you're coloring on the mask. And a general rule with Photoshop masks is you can flip them from black to white. And black means you have a hole in your paper, and white means you have a solid piece of your paper. So let's use that principle to cut this lady out. Because she has really nice subtle lines around her, unfortunately, selection tools are not going to work very well, although you can give those a try. Let's go ahead and grab our brush here. I'm going to get a much smaller brush, and I'm going to choose one with a nice natural edge on it. And what I'm going to do is basically zoom in, and I'm going to cut the lady out. So I'm going to make an outline along the outside of where I wanted to cut the lady out. So we're going to do the exact opposite of what we think we should do, which is to erase her out of this composition. So I'm just using my brush tool, messily going along here around the outside of her hair. And I don't want you to be too precise with this because remember, we're making a collage and I like a natural edge on mine. So it does not have to be too perfect. And as you can see, I'm just going along the inside of my graphic here, okay? The hands where it gets a little bit more difficult, I'm gonna make my brush a teensy bit smaller, and I'm just gonna trace along the outside, rather just the inside of our hand here. There we go. So many fancy images of smoking in vintage things. Don't you find that a little bit bizarre? There we go. I'm going to pause the video here, and when we come back, we'll have colored her all out of this composition, okay? So here we have our lady all colored out of our picture. It's looking a little strange now. Her boyfriend, or the ghost of him, is staring at us. It's like the ghost of boyfriend's past right now. We're going to flip this mask by selecting it. Be sure that you have the mask selected, not the pixels, okay? The mask. And we're going to do a keyboard command, Command-I. If you're on a PC, that would be Control-I. So Command-I, and look, we flipped our mask to where she is now the positive. So if you're cutting out something and it's a little complicated, remember you can use these nice flippable masks in Photoshop. Next up, let's go ahead and add a picture of the Eiffel Tower. In the files, you should be able to find one that's called Eiffel Tower. So drag and drop that into your Photoshop composition. Okay, and now we're going to place it behind her. I want it to be to where we can see most of the Eiffel Tower, so let's resize that down a little bit. And since this is a very vertical image, we're going to have to do a little bit of splicing to make this work. So first of all, let's get it to where the Eiffel Tower is just over her shoulder here. But we don't want it in the way of our cigarette, which again, just sounds so strange to say. So I'm going to take her and scoot her over a little. Here we go. To where more of the pillow, there we go. That's a little bit better of a composition. So remember, move things around until you're happy with the way that they look. Let's add a mask to this Eiffel Tower layer. So right here is the mask tool. And we're just going to feather out that edge. So you can either go and get a nice soft round brush, just the default soft round brush will work here, or you can use a textured brush like I'm going to do. So as I'm coloring this down, you can see that that white edge is beginning to fade. So I just like to do it gradually so we get a nice blended edge. This is the first part of our image. Let's go ahead and add some texture. So this is what we have so far. I'm going to put a texture on top of everything that's going to help everything come together and blend together a little bit. The file you're looking for is called Digital Paper. Let's drop Digital Paper on top of everything. Go ahead and put it on top of everything. And we're going to change the blending mode to something different. So this is set to multiply. I'm going to change the opacity of this layer down a little bit. There we go. I'm also going to move her on top of everything so she pops up against her background a little bit more so. The constellation, it's 08 constellation is what the file is called. We're going to zoom out because we need just the center piece of the circle of this file. Drag and drop it in here. And I'm going to move it behind her, but on top of the Eiffel Tower graphic, and resize it to where the circle is sort of coming out of the side of her head. So let's keep doing that. There we go. Just like that. So I'm using it as a frame for the space around her face, and I also want to make sure that the little stars end up in the corners. I'm just going to adjust the levels of this to where, there we go. It's a little bit more transparent. The next few elements we're going to be working on are the heron, the banner with the text on top, and the butterflies. And that should finish this up. The file you are looking for here is Gray Heron, and it is a JPEG, so we're going to have to cut out him from the background. We can do this pretty easily because it is pretty stark white around the outside, but I do want to talk about tolerance. So if I zoom in and I look at this, you can see that we've got a very strong edge around the outside of this Blue Heron woodcut print. But if I use my selection tools, and let's say I have my tolerance turned up to 70, and I select here, you can see that part of his beard is actually being selected as well, which is not ideal. So play with that tolerance setting up here at the top until you get the right number. So let's try 30 instead of 70. And that looks like it did it. It selected only the white this time and is not selecting the beard of the gray of the Blue Heron. Let's select this, and you can see that I get a little plus mark. I can add to my selection by holding in Shift on the keyboard, and I'm going to click on the background so it adds all of that to a mask. Now I'm going to click the mask button with that selection, and it's actually going to take out my heron, but that's okay because we know how to flip masks, correct? Select your mask, Command I. There we go, and now it is behaving like we want it to. Let's take a look at the original here. As you can see, I've also flipped this heron image. So Command T will get you to transform, and then you can go down in the contextual menu there to flip horizontal. So now that I've got my heron flipped, I'm going to hit spacebar to commit to those changes, and let's zoom out a little bit. We need a little bit of space next to our heron so he can be carrying the graphic that's going to hold the text. The thing that is going to be holding our text is called banner PNG, and it's already cut out for us, so we don't have to worry about doing that. Drag and drop that into our composition. There we go. I'm just going to flip this around. If I hold in Shift while I'm flipping things though, it'll automatically go in increments of 45 degrees, which is a nice tip. I'm also going to flip this horizontally as well. That way, this can end up in his little beak. So I'm going to place my ribbon over the beak, but because, again, I know how to use my masks, what I'm going to do is to add a mask to my banner, zoom in here, and so now I'm just going to use my brush tool to color a black area on my banner. There we go. If you go a little overboard, you can always pick that white color and bring some of the area that you accidentally colored out back. Now it looks like our heron is carrying our ribbon. It looks really odd for something so stark and so light to be against this very antique looking background, so let's fix that. I'm going to make a selection around the outside of my masks, and I'm going to make a folder. So inside that folder, I need to place my banner. There we go. And click the mask button. Now, important, what we have done here, let's flip that mask, Command I. What we have done here is essentially created a mask for everything that we want to be inside of this little banner. So I think our banner and our heron need to come up on our page a little bit, so let's grab both of them and shift them up. Here we go. We want the cigarette to be overlapping it just a teensy bit, but not a whole lot, because we need to put writing on there. So our banner is now where we want it to be. Let's grab one more copy of that paper. Remember that PM Book Pages paper that we had? Drag and drop that into our file. And as you can see, it's just on top of everything right now. But if I place it into the folder that we made with the mask that we made, you can see that it's only going to show up where our banner is. So now what I can do is to put this on multiply, and now it is a paper texture on top of our banner. Okay? So again, how I did this was I made a selection of the banner, I put it inside of a folder, and then I flipped that mask and put the paper inside of it. So it's probably the most complicated thing that we've done mask-wise so far. So you can have groups of things with applied masks to them. Be creative in how you use your masks. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to add some typography. I will be using the Adobe Handwriting font, and you can activate that in your Adobe fonts. So Adobe Handwriting in the Ernie style. So I'm just going to click anywhere with my text tool here, that's the little T, and type the title of the album. So it's going to come in with Lorem Ipsum, The Impossible Dream. And of course I want to take my move tool and scoot that over to where it belongs on the banner. You could also use your arrow keys to do this. There we go. I'm going to tilt it slightly up, just so it looks a little bit more handmade. And let's duplicate that layer. You can do that by dragging it down to the little plus button. And I want to change this type to say Patty Griffin. Which is the name of our singer-songwriter. And use your arrow keys to put that right here on the back. There we go. And I'm also going to tilt this one, but slightly down this time. There we go. So Patty Griffin, The Impossible Dream. We've got our typography going. So I've got some butterflies flying out from our dream space above our head. And I've also got, if you'll notice, a tint going on the outside. So let's do that. The file you're looking for this time is blue-gray. It's like 16 blue-gray. And I'm going to start with the smaller version of the butterfly, starting behind her head. And it's nice to have repeated elements in a design, so I want these to actually get bigger as they go further out. And let's try to position them like they're flying away. There we go. Last but not least, in our original image, we have a nice kind of orange vignette going along the outside. So if you compare it to the one that we've been making, and this one, you can see it does a good job of tying everything together. And now, remember your color harmonies. So we've been using a whole lot of blue in this composition so far, so the complement to that would definitely be an orange color. So if I sample one of these nice deep orange colors, which by the way, you can just choose an orange that you like. What I have going on here is a very burnt reddish orange. We're going to throw a layer on top of everything, and grab our paint bucket tool and just dump a bunch of really bright orange all over everything. You can see it reflected on my face. So the setting that we're going to put this on is multiply, and I know it seems super dramatic right now, but don't worry, we're going to be softening it quite a lot. First of all, change the opacity down. Change it way down to like 50 or so. And let's add a mask to this layer, just like we've been doing everything else. Grab your brush, and what you need to do is go to your general brushes when you have your brush drop down to soft round. And this soft round brush is going to give you a beautiful vignette effect if you make your brush nice and large. So what I'm going to do is to make my brush really huge, as you can see how big it is. And I'm going to color out the center in black. So we want everything in the center to be not tinted, and we want only our edges to be tinted orange a little bit. There we go. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as you can see, if I flip that layer on and off, it does quite a bit to tie everything together and make it look like it's one cohesive image rather than a collage that we've made. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial, making this fun collage, and you get some inspiration for your album project. Yes, you absolutely can use collage elements, and I encourage you to do so. If you're an illustrator, you can certainly use illustrations, but I wanted to present this as an option and give you a tutorial on how to make a cohesive one that has good textures and compositional choices. So I hope you learned at least a little bit something about masks and layering in Photoshop. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next time.